All right, man. Welcome to today's episode of Strong Men, Strong Marriages. Today, you're going to get to meet my wonderful, amazing wife, Elizabeth. So, this is the first time she's going to be on the podcast, which is kind of embarrassing. I should have had her on a long time ago. And this is actually an interview that we did with another couple. So, it's from the Faith, Family, and Fulfillment podcast with Chris and Suzanne Vester. It's just a fun thing. So I'm going to just do that interview as this. So just this little introduction, then you'll hear that interview. So, but some weekly wins first. So the guys in the program, they're getting deeper connections with God and with their friends. Really, that's what can happen sometimes is we get so focused on making our wife happy, we kind of lose our connection with outside people, which is important. Sometimes we can even lose that connection with God. We get frustrated or whatever. So men are finding that connection again and then turning that into more connection with their wife, right? When we connect more with God, it makes it easier to connect with our wife. Men are feeling much more grateful, right? And, being able to turn that towards God and towards their wife and just creating great relationships because of that. So one of the big things that is hard for a lot of guys, those will probably be next week's podcast, is, what do we do when our wife brings up our past mistakes? Usually what we want to do is just get past that, get over it, kind of not talk about it, right? But one of the gentlemen in the program that just started, he's able to manage that with laughing, right? Just kind of laughing at, yeah, I did that, man. I can't believe that. That was really, really bad, right? And able to make it light, right, and fun. And that was just such a cool way to deal with it. And he and his wife were just able to, joke about it, which is a great way to, I don't love the phrase moving forward, but, it's a great way to heal from the past. Guys are taking things a lot less personally. So, it's easy to, when your wife, let's say you go in for a kiss for your wife and she kind of pulls away, or you try to give her a hug and it's just like she's not too into it. It's easy to take that very personally. But guys are able to realize, hey, like sometimes that's not about me. Maybe she just is, kind of feeling off today. Maybe she has a headache, right? And maybe she has a cut on her hand and that's why she doesn't want to hold my hand, right? For me and my wife, sometimes her lips are just dry, right? She doesn't like to kiss when her lips are dry, right? It's not always about you. And as soon as you make it about you, you become less attractive. So guys are doing a great job taking things less personally. And then for me this week, had a really fun date night again with my wife, planned out some things, played some new games. It was just a lot of fun. And then for me, the thing I've been working on is just, really before I interact with any of my kids or my wife, just saying mentally, I love you, right? And then even trying to do that and mentally rehearsing doing that, like in times when it's more difficult, like, if my kids are talking back or if they are bugging each other or fighting each other, I can tend to be kind of reactive there. So rehearsing for that, just saying I love you, taking some breaths, right? And still address that stuff, but in a loving way. So yeah, guys, today it's a very special treat. My wife and I again had that chance to be interviewed by Chris and Suzanne Vester on the Faith, Family, and Fulfillment podcast. So go ahead and check them out too. So finally, right, you're gonna get to hear some of her side of our story. You've heard my side too much, right? So today, get to hear some of your side, and I'll do more of an interview with her in the future with just the two of us, and I'll ask her some questions. That'll be fun. Because this one, like I tend to do, I kind of talk too much. You definitely hear some of hers, but I wish you could have heard more of hers, and we'll give her that opportunity here soon. And again, if you are a high-achieving, professionally successful Christian man who's looking to be more attractive to his wife, whether that's you want to have a better sex life, you just don't have that element, feeling kind of stuck, trapped in your marriage, or you're, trying to recover from infidelity, or there's separation pending, or you're looking at that, I can help you. I've helped guys like you, and we do it by building strength, by connecting more with God, by restoring trust, communication, and intimacy, by building mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and sexual strength. So that's what we do. Guys are doing outstanding. The program works better than ever now. Love to have you as part of it. Again, head over to strongmarriages.com and we will see you there. All right, guys. So enjoy this interview with me, my wife, Elizabeth, and Chris and Suzanne Vester.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Faith, Family, Fulfillment. I'm your co-host, Chris.
And I'm Suzanne.
And we've got with us an exciting couple, Mike and Elizabeth Frazier, Dr. Mike Frazier. He is founder and creator of Strong Men, Strong Marriages, which is a platform where he coaches men, as well as his own podcast by the same name, Strong Men, Strong Marriages. And before we jumped on, I was like, hey, tell me a little bit about it. And he gave me a one sentence description that I think's awesome. Is I like helping men become more Christ-like men. So that's a great way to be coaching, because when we can show up that way everywhere, especially at home, things shift for us. So thank you guys for being on. And one more thing, parents, 5 kids, whew, man, it's a house full, 4 boys and a girl. Oldest is 16, youngest is 5. So there's probably a lot going on in that household. Probably a busy
That's
time.
loud.
Yes, busy.
So I'll pray us in and we'll get started.
Okay.
Lord, we come to you humbled by your grace and mercy as always. Ask for your leading and guidance of this conversation, so that the story that's told brings you the glory that it needs to, so that the audience hears the message they need to hear and can take away from it what they need to take away to become, as Mike said, more Christ-like leaders of their family, more Christ-like leaders of their wives. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
So Mike, tell me a little bit about Strong Men, Strong Marriages. Like, just kind of tell the audience what that means to you.
Yeah. So, to me, to be a good man, a good husband, it requires strength. So, to me, there's 5 different areas of strength that we work on and build. So we start with spiritual strength, then mental strength, emotional strength, physical is important, and then sexual strength. So, when we build those strengths, we feel better, we're more attractive, to our wife when we do have those kind of strengths. The way I think about it now is, we use those strengths to build certain pillars in our marriage that create, a passionate, fun, great marriage. And those are, trust, communication, and intimacy. So when we use those strengths and build those pillars, that's when we create a really outstanding marriage.
So, and you've been doing this for how long?
Yeah. So what's it been? Like 5 years I've been doing marriage coaching. So I went to medical school. I graduated there in 2012, graduated residency 2016. And so I was doing like part-time, traditional psychiatry type work, medications, all that, doing some of this on the side, and now just transitioned to doing the coaching full-time this year.
Gotcha. And the heart of it came from struggles in your own relationship.
Yes.
Like, most of us get really passionate when we overcome something and we want to share with the world how to overcome, right?
Yep.
Somebody said once, if you had the cure to cancer, wouldn't you tell everybody?
Yeah.
So when you struggle, you find yourself like part of that's us. Like, we've had struggles and wanting to help people work through those.
Yep.
Oh, Elizabeth, you want to tell us your side of how those struggles play out, or like where do you, how do you, like, and then I want to hear Mike's side of that too. So we're going to work on
No,
both
for
sides.
sure. So I didn't even realize how separate our lives were for years, many years. I grew up in a home that looked really perfect on the outside, but was incredibly abusive in just about every way you can imagine, sexually, physically, spiritually, any way that you can imagine. Abuse was happening besides closed doors. So both of us kind of assume or gave the abuse the excuse of why we weren't more intimate and why I wasn't letting him get closer to me emotionally and things like that. So we just were in this pattern of blaming the abuse. I was in the pattern, he was in the pattern. We both just assumed that's what it was. And as time went on, we have started having bigger struggles in our marriage, and which I think a lot of people have to work through. And we wanted to work through them and not just give up. So we started going to our own therapy, and Michael decided to take a couple days to go on his own retreat, kind of a thing, just him, to really sit with and think about the things that he had been experiencing. And he started to realize that he was not helping the situation by a lot of the habits and patterns that he had in himself. And I realized, oh, you know what, you're right. I was in a comfortable position of letting you treat me this way, but it was making me pull away even subconsciously. And we realized when we thought we were close, we really were far apart. And so it was that time that he took away that he realized I really have been screwing up. And I was letting him because it was comfortable for me too. And I was doing things to perpetuate the same pattern. So it wasn't just him, it was both of us that really needed to change our thinking and change how we were, married and how our relationship was. And so that time away really focused him on himself and what he needed to change and fix. And he started making those changes and they were consistent. And I started feeling safer and closer to him. And every part of our marriage started getting better by the things that he was doing mentally to overcome the habits and patterns that he was in. And we just have a lot more trust and unconditional love for not only each other, but our kids and our other relationships. It's interesting that it's poured over onto all of these relationships and hasn't just impacted the two of us. And it's been a beautiful thing to experience with him.
So, Michael, I want to hear your side of that. And then I kind of want to go deep into the sabbatical part of that, like taking that time away and really doing the self-exam. Tell me your side of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, I honestly thought for most of our marriage that I was the perfect husband. Like, I was so great, right? Like, I would help cook, I'd help clean, I'd take care of the kids, so I did our church stuff. I kind of was a leader in that. And so like I was providing well for my family. I'm a doctor and I'm making good money doing that. So I kind of felt very entitled to having her give me attention, appreciation, affection, sex, like I deserved it for everything I was doing. I got that outside of the marriage, not sex, but attention and appreciation from people. They were, Dr. Fraser, you're so great. Or even like at church, or even her friends or like her therapist, they'd be like, oh, like he's so great, he's such a great husband, I wish I had someone like him. And so, I took that mindset into like our relationship. Like, well, everybody else thinks I'm great and I think I'm great, like why don't you think I'm great? And so, and feeling like
I did think he was great. On paper, it looked great.
Yeah. Well, and so that's the thing, right? And so, and this is why I say I work with high achieving guys, because I feel like there's a different mindset that goes into it when you are like outwardly pretty successful, right? Where it's like, no, look how good I am. But yeah, Elizabeth kind of felt that distance. And even she, like she said, she didn't really get why, because like on paper, yeah, I'm checking all the boxes, I'm being a great husband, but it just wasn't there. But that whole, and this is what I had to see. And in our coaching, like the funny thing is I actually been coaching men for a while before we did our own coaching and like helping guys get good results and stuff. But like this transformed us big time, right? When I could get someone from the outside and just tell me like, hey man, like the way you're acting, problem, like major problem. So I do stuff like, blame her for a lot of things. Like when we were with our family, I'd say, oh, I'd like to do that, but Elizabeth doesn't want to. Just like throwing her under the bus a lot. Even like if you listen to my old podcast, I did it like in my old podcast. Like some of my initial ones kind of made her look like the villain. Like, oh, like I'm the suffering martyr here. Like, look how great I am. My wife doesn't do all this stuff, but I still do everything. But really like creating that frame. And like she said, we both kind of bought into it, like, oh, I'm the hero, she's the victim. But that whole framework just is horrible. And like thinking I'm better than her basically is what that comes down to. It's not attractive to feel like you're better than your wife, right? To be throwing her under the bus, to be not supporting her. yeah, like I'm starting to get kind of emotional thinking about it. Like I feel horrible, that I treated her that way for so long, but I didn't see it. Right? I didn't see it. So, when I started to really see it, that's when I took that trip and was just like, man, this is really bad the way I've been treating her. And like when I came back after that trip, like I really believed very strongly she had every right to divorce me. Like, and I would have understood and just been like, yeah, like, I treat you this way. Basically, it was like an abuser, treating her kind of like a prostitute, just saying like, look, you owe me sex for everything I do. So you should give it to me. And if you don't, I'm mad, right? And I'm gonna pout or I'm gonna, do whatever. So yeah, just really a wrong way of thinking about things. Yeah, I was able to see it. Thankfully, Elizabeth didn't divorce me. Kind of the opposite happened when she's like saw that I actually like got it. Um, that's really when things started taking off as far as like real intimacy and connection between us. So yeah.
So during the sabbatical part of it, like taking those days away, and that's probably the only way I can, when I think about the separating yourself from every situation to really dive into, hey, what's going on in my head, my heart, like what's going on there. Is that where the idea of coming up with the 4, like working on mental, spiritual, physical, sexual, like, is that where that came from? Was that time alone and going, hey, these are the things in my life I've got to work on?
No, that was more, I'd kind of thought of that way before in the past. But yeah, I think it was more just like seeing that I wasn't living the principles that I thought I was, right? Or like because like if you would have asked me before this happened, like, yeah, I'm strong in all that. Like that would have been my response. But like being able to see, actually, no, like a lot of those are really pretty weak, and you need to build those up. So yeah, that's a big part of the program I do with guys now, is like an apology letter where we really try to find all of these ways that we're driving our life away, that maybe we didn't see at first. And most of the guys that come in have this same experience when they do that, like, holy, I can't believe I behaved this way, for so long. But it's hard to see, especially if you, like, on the outside, you're like checking those boxes, right, and doing the right things. It's that mindset that's the problem, right? That I'm better than you, that you owe it to me. I'm more righteous than you. I definitely had that. Like, well, I'm closer to God than you. Like the way that I relate with God's better than how you do. Like everything better. Like I'm better. And I think high achieving guys kind of thrive off of that. Like it's kind of driven by this fear of being inferior, and so you work really hard to be superior to other people, like in whatever, in sports or in work or in academics or whatever. So yeah, being able to tune into my own worth more, like getting that from God more, was a big deal. Being consistent with the things I said, like even drawing some attention to that, like seeing how I didn't follow through with some important things that I would say I would do. Eroded trust. But overall, it was just this like what I call narcissistic behavior, right? Selfish, didn't care about her, but also sadistic, like hurting her and actually like getting some enjoyment out of that was the worst thing that I saw in myself. Like when I would throw under the bus, be like, oh, I wish we could do this, but we can't because of her. And she'd kind of like squirm. I'd sort of like feel good about that because I felt like, oh, finally she's getting what she deserves because she won't give me, attention and sex and all that. So yeah, it's like you have to dig kind of deep to find it, but once you find it, you're like, oh yeah, no kidding. Of course she doesn't want to have sex with me. Of course she's not attracted to me. And then like once you find it, then you can actually do something about it.
In our organization, we do some leadership development training. And I take guys that are like, well, not guys, separate groups. It's always either a group of guys or a group of ladies. And, we work on a lot of the same things. One of them is their connection, like a relationship in their life that they want to, over the next 12 weeks, really pour into. And we only let them pick one per 12 weeks. what's been amazing to me is we've been doing this about a year and a half, and almost every single person that's married, the first person they pick is a child. Like, it's not their spouse, you know. The cool thing is usually at least the second 12 weeks they do go to the spouse, right? Because I think, and I've talked about it with the guys that do it. I said it's almost like you're practicing on your kid, because you got some internal work to do, but the one that you're the most vulnerable to is not the one you want to have that first 12 weeks with, because it is hard work to do that deep dive into where all the spaces that you're failing is.
Yeah, and I'm interested to hear, Elizabeth, what your thoughts were as he was making shifts and changes and showing up differently and showing up consistently. I'm sure that had huge impacts in all areas of your life, but probably one of the biggest ones was in your sense of worth and how you were seen, viewed, and shown those different things. Share with us what that looked like for you.
Yeah, I had to stop listening to his podcasts for a while because I felt personally attacked every time, and I didn't want to hear it anymore. And I started telling him that. And as I saw his changes, I felt like I could tell him things. And I didn't feel like, okay, he's better and I'm down here, which is how I felt also. So it wasn't just him thinking it. I thought it too. And partly because he was making me feel that way, and partly because of my past, I was feeling that way, and my own self thoughts that weren't healthy. And so, like, even when we are, like, we still argue now. And when we argue now, I tell him, get ready, because I am not going to back down anymore on things that I believe in and things that I feel, because I am stronger in myself and stronger in our relationship, that I know I can trust him with the truth of my heart. When before I would just do anything that he said and be like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'll do these specific steps that you feel are important, even though they didn't resonate for me, because I thought he always knows better. And since he's humbled himself, and, honestly, for a man that thinks he's so amazing, when they humble themselves, it's an attractive thing. And it's something that I wanted to be closer to him because of. And so now we are more honest with each other. Our kids see that it's okay to get in disagreements and then find mutual respect for each other, when before they would see us fight and I'd usually fold, and that was just something they were used to. But now they see us actually respect each other, and it's been good for them to see they can use their own voice and what they believe in. And, he brought up God, and our relationship with God is so different, but they're both strong. And it's okay to have two different relationships with God and have them both be strong. You can find God in so many different ways and connect with him in so many different ways. And having him respect me now for that has been so empowering and made me closer to God also, because I can trust that my relationship with him is there, when before I'd always second guess it. And now my relationship with him is better. So it just rolled off onto everything.
Yeah. And I think, and you didn't use the word transactional in any of your conversation, but our world is so very transactional. I'm going to give you and you're going to give me. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we try to stress both at home and through connections and groups that we do is it needs to be more about the foundational things, the relational things versus transactional things. How do you help folks kind of get out of that mindset of, that the trade, whatever that might be?
Yeah. So for me, I call that the Mosquito Cycle. So basically it's like you do nice stuff for your wife, like, Gary Chapman, 5 Love Languages, great book. But if you apply it like I did, where it's like, oh, like if I, buy her gifts and tell her she's great and, spend time with her and do acts of service, that means that now she should give me attention, appreciation, affection, and sex, right? So, and then so I call it mosquito because you're trying to like suck those things off of her, right? You're trying to suck off attention, appreciation, affection, sex. It's not attractive. It might work for a while, but eventually she kind of feels it, right? Senses it. I imagine, that's what's going on for you. Like eventually you kind of knew, yeah, I was doing those nice things, but it wasn't like the intentions weren't right.
We always know.
So maybe she did it first too, but then she, eventually started to just say no, which was the appropriate response. But like when you think in that mindset, like, oh, you owe it to me, when you don't get it, you start getting mad, right? You start getting frustrated. You start being like, what the heck? Like, I'm doing my side. Why aren't you doing yours? And then you go into either an explosion or an escape, right? So you get mad. And I would do this a lot. I do so much for you. Why don't you do this for me? Right? Why can't you do this one thing that I care about? And I don't know, like, how did you feel when I was doing that kind of thing?
It made me want to do it less. It made me further away from him. And it wasn't until he was doing it because he loved me with no expectation that I could tell it was genuine and wanted to be closer to him. But we can tell, we know if they're doing it because they love us or if they're doing it because they have an ulterior motive.
Yeah. And so, right. So like I get mad and then, or, escape, like, I didn't do this often, but sometimes I would like turn to pornography or things like that. It's just like some kind of escape. Go work out, go work more, just kind of like avoid, the situation. Then eventually I feel guilty, especially if I got angry, right? Then I'd feel bad. And I just go back, right? Go back to, well, like, let me do those 5 love languages again. Oh, it's not working. Now I'm going to get mad. Now I feel bad. So it just like ran that cycle forever. So, and like Elizabeth said, the way to get out of it is just, you kind of change the reasons why you're doing those things. Like you compare right actions with wrong intentions and then it fails, right? It's not wrong to buy her a flower or, do the dishes or whatever, right? But if your intention is help my wife, you're good, right? If your intention is get something back, you're in trouble. It's like I like to just think about, changing the win, right? What's the win? And like you said at the very beginning, the win is when you interact with your wife, you're behaving in a way that you can be proud of, right? That God can be proud of. You're acting in a Christ-like way. That's the win, right? And that's how I describe it to you guys now. Like I call myself a coach, right? So what does a coach do? He helps his team win games. So what's our game? Our games are interactions with our wife, right? And what's the win? Well, we used to define it as the win is when she does something for me, but now the win is, no, I've behaved in a Christ-like way, right? I've behaved in a way I'd be proud to have my kids emulate, right? That's the win. Now, the weird thing that happens is when you stop trying to manipulate that result, that's when you actually get that result of attention, appreciation, affection, sex, because now your wife actually knows you care. You're in like an attractive feeling state. Your intentions are clean, they're good, they're attractive. So that's how I describe it these days.
Yeah, I told you in our company, we do the leadership development. And one of the things that we've started doing recently is helping someone come up with a personal statement. Almost like in our business, we have like a core mission statement. And if you can, and when we go through the process, I said, I don't want you to think about it with the end in mind. So we're going to go through it. And then at the end of it, I'm going to ask you a question. So we go through this process and they create these statements. Suzanne's is on the wall behind us. And I've got one that I'm a bold man who lives with intention and who acts with intention and from love. And I stand as a beacon pointing to God's grace and mercy. Well, at the end of my life, if they're standing over my box and they can say that about me, then it was a life well lived, right? And so when these guys go through that, the idea is it does change the game. Like the intention is at the end of my life, what are they going to say about me? What's the legacy I'm leaving for my children? What's the legacy I'm leaving for my wife? How am I showing up in a way that at the end, what they say about me, I'm proud of. And the mindset shift of that, it's like you say, it takes them out of transaction because the win is so different,
So if you were to, and I hate to even call it an elevator pitch, but if you were to sum up the biggest win that you could give somebody, if you were asking, what do you do and how could I be served by that? How would you kind of sum that up in a short way?
Yeah. So the best compliment that I get from guys that come through my program is that they feel closer to God at the end of it. That's what I love, right? If you've done that, you won, right? You won. That's what I'd say.
Absolutely.
Well, I know we want to be cognizant of your time. We want to say thank you for being so kind. And if people want to connect with you, what's the best way for people to connect with you on here?
Yeah, so you can go to the podcast, Strong Men, Strong Marriages. If you do start that, I recommend going through like the first 4 episodes and then kind of jumping around from there. And then, strongmenstrongmarriages.com is the website. There's going to be a free kind of 7-day series, how to be more attractive to your wife. And then if you're interested in coaching, there's an application you can fill out and we do a call to see if you're a fit.
Elizabeth, do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to throw out?
No, just thank you for having us on, and appreciate what you guys do to bring people closer to God also. So it's a good thing.
Appreciate it. When you guys want to pray us out?
Sure. Yeah, I'll do it. All right. Heavenly Father, we're grateful we could be together today and talk about ways that we can be closer to you and closer as husband and wife. And just grateful for your help and inspiration in that. Help us all as we go to try to do your work in the world. We can have your help and guidance, and say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you guys again.